So our next speaker is Brigitte Howarth, and I think that this is not the first time that you've done this, is it, Brigitte? You've done it many years ago as a PhD student, is that right? Yes. So Brigitte has come quite a long way. She is at the American University in Dubai, and she's going to talk to us about the flies that she's been finding in the UAE. So over to Brigitte.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure I know how to.
Are you okay?
That's good, right? Everybody can see that. Yeah. Good, good.
That's subtitles.
Okay. Great. Well, hello. Thank you very much, Zoe, for having me and for entertaining on a British Diptera's Day. Somebody speaking about the UAE. I do appreciate it. I have been in and out of touch with the Diptera's Forum for many, many years. As Zoe said, when I was doing my PhD, I was as nervous as I probably am today, coming to speak to so many experts, because I, at heart, am an ecologist rather than a taxonomist. But it always blows my mind when I'm in a room full of people that know so much about the taxonomy, and how gracious they have been as well with helping me with identifications. So it's always a pleasure to be here, and also to be at the Natural History Museum. So the UAE, really, for those of you who have been there, you will know. For those of you who haven't or aren't sure where it is, it's on the Arabian Gulf. There are some interesting countries nearby as well. So on one side, so to the right, you have Oman, and then to the left, the little island-looking thing is Qatar, but then there's also Saudi Arabia. And the UAE really spans two oceans. So it has the Arabian Gulf, but then it also has the Indian Ocean. This particular image was taken on a day when there was a dust storm, and you can kind of see it blow through at the very top, which of course is something that's quite common in countries where sandy habitats are dominant. I wanted to show you with the pointer. Do we have the pointer somewhere there?
Yes. Can you use the cursor?
Can use the cursor. Is going to work on here?
Yeah. If you click on this one here.
Yeah. Okay, good. Then I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you. So here, this mountain range is known as the Hajar Mountains, and this actually spans both the UAE and Oman. But then here on the inside, there's different topography. And in fact, this is limestone. And here is a town called Al Ain, which is part of the Abu Dhabi Emirate. And it's very interesting because this is the only mountain in the Abu Dhabi Emirate, and it's quite large. And keep that in mind, because I'll show you something else in a little while about that. So a lot of you might think of the desert as looking something a little bit like that, and you wouldn't be wrong. We do have a lot of sandy habitats, of course, but there is much more to the UAE apart from, you know, the beautiful ripples of sand that one can see. Yes, we do have some of these other organisms that you might expect, like scorpions, but surprisingly, the habitats are very, very diverse. Sometimes we do have some of these more cultivated areas, so oases. In the past, there have been also oases maybe that were slightly more natural, but now there are a lot of these oases that are cultivated, that grow fodder. So the grass is Rhodes grass and is something that is being grown for the various fodder animals, but then also the date palms, also citrus and mango and many other fruit varieties that are grown in some of the oases. But if you take a closer look at the sand dunes, then you suddenly realize that actually they're quite vegetated, and it depends on what kind of rainfall we've had. Because this is a hyper-arid zone, the rainfall is quite erratic, so it's different every year. Nevertheless, we do get quite a bit of rain, and enough to actually sustain some forests too, or groves. So these particular trees are gaff trees, locally known, or Chrysopus cineraria. and really full of very interesting insect species. I once had a Malay trap that I had set up just here for just under a year, which yielded some very interesting results. And there is a lot of moisture, so even though it's hyper arid, within the sand is a repository of water. Sometimes there are even reservoirs of water underneath the sand. And you see that quite often then early morning with all of the mist rising and being burnt off quite quickly. But it does mean that there is this particular reservoir available for organisms. But we also have mountains in the UAE. So if you remember that long mountain range that I showed you, the Hadjar Mountains are made of ophiolite mountains, and ophiolite is really almost oceanic crust being pushed up, but it's made volcanically, so or lava, made of lava. Interestingly enough, they're very, very brittle. So yes, obviously made through metamorphic processes. However, brittle to the point where when you have mountains without much vegetation and you have rain, a lot of flash floods are caused. And these flash floods break down some of the rocks, wash them down into the wadi systems, they're called, or into the dried riverbeds, and then create almost these terraces, which are then cut up again because they're relatively soft by the next rain and so on. And so over a long geologic period, you get these very distinct differences. So over here on the left, you can actually see those terraces that I was just showing you. And there, when you look closer, you see that that is actually almost like a natural concrete. It's conglomerate. Whereas here you see that this is much more like the bedrock. A lot of the mountain wadis have water all year round. Sometimes some of the water disappears above ground, but it's still below ground. But even if you have evaporation, sometimes you have some pools that are there all year round. You could see here that actually even this particular pool that looks so full had been higher a little bit earlier on in the year. So moving from the metamorphic areas into the limestone areas, they also are very brittle. And interestingly enough, if you have a closer look, there are quite a lot of fossils in these layers. This particular one, a gastropod, it was really quite large and still in situ, which was very nice to see. But you know, even the urban areas have a lot of natural environments. So the skyline is Dubai, but in the front it's a wetland. And on closer inspection, you can see that these are actually mangroves. So these are all very rich habitats, providing a rich biodiversity of insects, not just in species diversity, but also in evenness. All of the different habitats that we have seen there, maybe the only ones that I haven't mentioned yet are that we also have sapka, which are areas where the salt intrusion has almost made the mud so hard and very impenetrable. Very few organisms are found there, but then also inland water. It's interesting that below some of the sand dunes are impermeable rock areas, and that means that between the sand and the impermeable rock, there can also be water, and when it rains, these form ephemeral pools as well. So all of these habitats then have created quite a rich diversity. When I first arrived in the UAE, which is almost 23 years ago, we didn't really have many resources available. With a friend of mine, Mike Gillett, we were able to write a chapter and pull together all of the knowledge of the literature with some of the species we had in our collections, and then also from the wildlife agency that is in Abu Dhabi, and we created a list of about 1,500 insects at that time, recorded from the UAE. But all of you will realize that, you know, with all of these rich habitats, there's got to be many more. And indeed, when Sheikh Tahnoon commissioned for a study to take place, Tony van Harten was brought on board, and maybe some of you know Tony, and he was able to, with collaborators around the world, provide 6 volumes of arthropod fauna. I only have pictures of 5 of them. The 6th one was unfortunately, I think, in circulation with only 10 copies, so I haven't actually got that one. I've only got it in electronic version. But this created a huge amount of knowledge, which has really brought forward the study of entomology. So from our humble 1,500 species, Tony was able to add over 2,000 records into the insect and actually arthropod fauna of the UAE, culminating also in a very interesting statistic of a huge number new to science. And so, of course, when you have 17% of everything that you're recording that is new to science, you're doing baseline work and also adding species new, but it means that we have virtually no knowledge of their ecology. We know nothing of their habitats. We wouldn't be able to do a study like Chris's, where we're looking at whether there is a range change over years, because we're still recording baseline data. And a lot of that is because there aren't really taxonomists there yet. And as I preempted, I'm an ecologist. I'm very interested in taxonomy, and I've done a little bit of work to try and move forward. But I'm actually also here to reach out and ask for some help, because we have over the years done quite a few studies, and I will summarize roughly first the Diptera in terms of Tony's work. So the families, and I'll go slowly so that those of you who are interested in the different Diptera families can see. Some of the families are very well represented of the Diptera, but others are just represented with one sample, sometimes only one record going back quite a long time, but then also confirmed in Tony's volumes. Maybe surprisingly, some of the groups like the ephedrids are really very diverse, and then others really not at all. So the total number of families, Diptera families that have so far been recorded are 55, and total species is actually 705 in the Diptera. Now, these families are not complete. Tony had enough material to publish a further volume, which at the moment hasn't been possible. So this will tell you that we are still working on baseline work, and that really means that it's quite urgent to finish this work, because we don't even know what we're losing right now with changes, with land use change, with habitat changes. So what do they look like, some of them? Well, quite amazing. And I have to say that I was really fortunate to be behind the scenes yesterday. Zoe kindly allowed me to visit the collections, and I met Martin. I'm going to get your name wrong. Iberji. And he really helped a lot, because you know, before I knew that was an acyllid, but I may not have known that it was Promachus. So that certainly has helped. I don't think I'm going to pronounce this next one, but that's another one of the acylids that was found. And you know, when we have a desert environment that is so erratic, all the life histories of the organisms adapt really well. And so this is a year where there was heavy rainfall in the winter months, so sort of November, December. And what happened the following year was that there was a huge diversity of plants and plants widespread that germinated. This area is normally the same color as the background rocks, so really very sparse in vegetation, and that particular year was very rich. And this meant that we were able to observe some really spectacular organisms. This has not been recorded yet from the UAE, so I was absolutely thrilled to be able to find Paraschistus pulchellus, had been recorded from Kuwait, and it had been recorded in Oman. So I was expecting to see it in the UAE and was just thrilled to be able to observe it. And I have to say, Martin Drake reminded me of maybe a little embarrassing moment when I showed a similar video to this many, many years ago. When I was looking at hoverflies and trying to record their flight patterns. But this is too precious not to put into the presentation, just to show, because really so little is known of this organism. So I was very happy to see it and to see it fly. There are many others as well. You know, this is maybe one that I'm not too sure which species it is. Martin did help me with that one as well. And then some of the other species that I've collected from Malay strap samples. So here we have a caliphorid, quite a spectacular looking one. But then also species that maybe one wouldn't often see, like this mydid fly. I didn't know it was a mydid when I first saw it, and I recorded it flying, landing on the dunes, and then moving backwards. And as it was moving backwards, pushing its abdomen down into the sand until all you could see was this. And so, you know, that's incredible behavior that I hadn't known. And in fact, it was that particular year that other people around the world were working, I think in Italy, on mydids, and had seen or observed the same behavior of this fly, the female sort of waddling backwards and then dipping its abdomen down. But that'll tell you how delicate or how worried we should be about preserving some of these species, because this is the kind of sand that gets compacted through off-road activities and so on, which are really threatening, if you like, some of the UAE environments. Another observation that I made a few years before was male and female mating in free fall. I think that's quite extraordinary. You know, and then occasionally seeing things like predation. So here is a wasp, Polistes vatae, actually predating one of the mydid flies. Through Tony's work, it was very nice that one of the flies that I had recorded only to genus in a publication was spotted by Martin Hauser, and quite humbled by this, but he did name it after my work, which I was very happy about. And then, of course, some surfids, and there are quite a few surfids. I'll talk about them in a little while again. But this is just to give you an overview of some of the species that you know, you can see with the naked eye. Of course, not everything is that size, as many of you know through the work that you do. Oh, where did it go? This was an interesting fly. This is Goneurelia tridens, so one of the tephritids. And that is a bed sheet behind it. So that'll show you how small it is, because bed sheet weave is quite small. And just extraordinary to see it with those amazing pictures on its wings. And the first time I saw this fly, I didn't actually see the fly body at all. It was sitting on oleander. And you can see it's quite grey, and then very iridescent green eyes, all blending into the plant. And all I could see were ants that looked like they were dancing. And it wasn't until I collected the fly into the net and then saw that actually it was a fly. So I was quite interested in that behavior. So what I've been able to do in the UAE, because of just some circumstances, were some Malay and slam trap studies. And I've summarized them here, along with the timing. So the 7 protected areas were being investigated by the Dubai municipality, and I was allowed to set up some Malaise traps in the 7 protected areas and run them for some of them up to a year, some of them just under a year, but the period of time was 17, 18, from April to April roughly. And then the Dubai Desert Conservation Reserve is one of the 7 protected areas, but I actually have some collaborative links there, and I was able to do a comparative study there of a slam trap and a Malaise trap in 2 different gaff groves. So the tree that you saw earlier, it's a regional endemic, and very little is known about the faunal associations with the tree. So I was very happy to do that study as well. And then Wadi Kinan is one of the mountain wadis, and I set up a Malaise trap there and ran that for approximately 5.5 years, visiting the trap every 2 weeks. So that's quite a lot of samples, but at the moment, this is all a snapshot. These are snapshots of having had the opportunity to collect because I had permission to do this, but I'm now having to sift through it, and I do have a day job. So this is not something that I can do very easily, which is why, again, I'm asking for any help with identifications, even if it's sending the odd photograph and having a little bit of help with, well, this might be this family or that family, because I am still learning. In terms of the hoverflies, that's what I spoke about when I first came to Diptera's forum many years ago. So the surfids, because I was working on mimicry, that's what my PhD was on. Within that mountain wadi, so Wadi Kinan, I was able to find these highlighted species. I was lucky enough to be able to meet Chimo Mengual and John Schmidt at one of our surfid meetings not so long ago, and myself and my friend Roxanne, who has been working on this study with me, were able to work with the 2 of them and confirm, in fact, that our specimens included both Ischiodon aegyptius and also Ischiodon scrutillaris, and I'll show you one of the differences of those individuals. But then we also managed to find a new record from the wadi samples, and this is only one group. This is a group that I know a little bit better. So imagine all of these other groups and all of those samples. There is still an awful lot to be learned from all of those samples. So here we have a scanning electron microscope image, and I just wanted to show you this particular structure here. So that's a calcar on the metatrochanter, and if you zoom in, you can see that there's a difference. And so Ischiodon scrutillaris on the left shows you that it's a much shorter and stouter structure, whereas Ischiodon aegyptius, it's slender and long. And that's one way that you can tell the males apart. So this was very helpful, of course, learning this from Chimo, and very grateful to him. We're hoping to put a little paper together. Haven't had the time to do that yet, but hoping to use those photographs for that. And so just showing you, so that's one of the parts of the projects, but the challenges remain. And the challenges are some of the smaller individuals, some of the smaller flies. Again, Martin was very kind yesterday in helping me. I thought it was a dolichopodid, but he was able to help me further with that as well. Another bombylid that, again, I wasn't sure what this might be. So I think Martin thought it was Pipunculopsis or Pentra rossea. But then some of these other very small individuals that, yes, I wouldn't even know where to start. So what I'm doing, together with some colleagues, I mean, if anybody wants to help with them, I'd love to have some help. I think that with some friends of mine, what we're doing, particularly the natural history group individuals, we meet, say, once a week. And we spend a couple of hours, 3 hours, just sifting. And you don't need to be an expert to know what looks similar or different. And so a lot of that is being at least sifted, or an initial sorting, which is very helpful, because then I can reach out to some individuals and you know, get a little bit of help with some of the identifications. Here is again something that I learned yesterday. I didn't know that was an ephedridae, and Martin again thought this was Ephedra flavipes. So very nice to be able to put a name to something. And maybe this one was the biggest surprise for me, because this was also flying in that wadi, and it looked like a syrphid at first to me, and then it obviously wasn't a syrphid, and then I wasn't sure how to place it. So it's another bombylid, and Martin yesterday thought he knew instantly which this was, and thanks to the verification with the Natural History Museum collection, we were able to confirm that this is Antonia suarissima. So that was very nice to put a name to it.
The automatic subtitles are doing an excellent
Yes.
job.
Yes. Okay. Well, I hope that was at least a little bit interesting. I know it's not the UK, but I really would like to ask if there is anybody who would like to help in helping us sort out some of these specimens, even if it's only sending photographs and getting at least some ideas to help us further a little bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Photograph.
I think I failed with the microphone. Can you hear me? Yeah, they can, can't they? I'll stop. Right. Do we have any questions for Brigitte? No one's putting their hand up. Okay. There's one online. Okay, let's read it out. So a question from Sue Taylor online. Fascinating. How well is the flora known? So you can begin to work out relationships. Some amazing flies. So
yeah. So you know, this project has been wonderful, because now we have these volumes. And by the way, if anybody wants to see them, I've brought them with me. So you are very welcome to trawl through them after we've finished the official talk. They were quite heavy, you'll see, but anyway. So it is diverse, but we know only that they occur. So we know so little about their ecology and biology, their habitat niches and so on.
Brigitte,
and this is concerning.
I didn't do a very good job of reading out Sue's question. She's asking about the flora.
Ah, the flora. So yes, we know more about the flora than we do about everything else. So we have about 500 odd species. Of course, they are regional, not only occurring in the UAE. Quite a few exotics as well, but we do have quite a lot of endemics as well. And so those are very well known. Marika Youngblood a few years ago published an incredible flower guide. There is really nothing else that's surpassed it. So we do know quite a lot about plants.
Okay, thanks, Brigitte. Any more questions, Victoria? No. Okay, so we're.
Yeah, really interesting, especially if you like that part of the world. From your Malaise traps, which you very gainly got for over 5 years, every 2 weeks, is great data.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any provisional data on pattern seasonality or not? Because these systems don't have the normal seasonality we're used to in temperate areas.
The only seasonality that I noticed was in Wadi Canaan. So that particular wadi that I sampled, luckily there is a weather station nearby, a federal one. And so I was able to take the hoverflies and see whether when hoverflies were abundant, did that have an impact? You know, was there anything else going on? And there seemed to be a relationship between the wetter years and more hoverflies. but that's very preliminary. But the good thing is that that weather data is available. What isn't done yet is all of the sifting. I'm still sifting through all of the material, and that needs to be done. It's going to take a while. Are you going to come and help?
Okay, I think we're done with questions for Brigitte. So thank you very much, Brigitte. And